Hi everyone, I'm back talking to Deb McKinney, General Manager of Property Management at Harcourts Cooper & Co. Hi Deb.
Hi Karen, nice to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. We're still in the process of untangling all of the things I'm going to talk about with you today, so it's been a busy time.
Oh, look forward to it, and thank you for having me at Harcourts Cooper & Co head office.
You're welcome, it's lovely to have you here.
So today we're discussing the Residential Tenancy Amendment Act 2024. So whether you're a property owner, an investor, go and grab yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, you're going to learn a few things. So Deb, could you provide an overview of the changes?
Okay, so there is a few that have come out in this one that I think are quite significant. And so the very first, which is the one that a lot of people in my industry are very excited about, is the reintroduction of the 90-day notices. So what that means is that up until this point, you've had to have a reason to give a tenant notice for 90 days, which has included things like renovating the property, significant renovations, giving them notice because you intend to put the property on the market. And so the change, which came into effect on the 30th of January, now means that you don't have to have a reason to give a tenant notice to vacate the property. So you can just send them the notice and give them the final date, which needs to be a 90-day minimum, and that's all the information that you need to give them. So the second one is that notice periods have actually reduced for tenants as well. So if you're a tenant on a periodic agreement, you previously have had to hand in 28 days notice if you intend to vacate, and that's been brought back down to 21 days, which is what it was when the last government came in. There's also a change in notice periods from landlords who wish to move back into their property. So previously that's been 63 days and now that's 42 days. And we've also got a change to fixed terms ending. So up until this point, if you were on a fixed term tenancy, then by law the agreement had to roll over and stay on a periodic agreement. But now with the introduction of the fixed terms changing, it means that you can actually end a tenancy at the end of the fixed term. And there is also PET provisions which are due out later this year.
So if someone signs up for a year lease, can the landlord break that lease within that year, or do they have to wait for the whole year? Or is that 90-day clause?
That fixed term does give the tenants a right of access to the property for the full term of the lease, but it's not uncommon that a landlord or a tenant's circumstances change, and if there is going to be a lease break situation, that does have to be by mutual agreement with both of them.
So how do these changes affect the market?
Look, property management has been a political hot potato over the years, and it's often used as a bit of a campaigning tool. Some of the changes that we've seen brought in now were basically just undoing what was brought in back in 2021. And so I think that the aim overall, and it's hard to disagree with some of these policies having this effect, is that it will actually free up the rental market. And so when these changes came back in January 2021, what it actually saw was that it increased prices and it had a constraining effect on supply. And I think the idea around what we're doing now with these new rules is to open the market back up again, give both landlords and tenants more freedom and flexibility that they've had up until this point, keep a little bit of a cap on some of the skyrocketing rent increases that we saw, and overall just have a more positive effect for landlords and help them come back into the market.
All positive stuff. So with the new PET bond, how does that impact the investors, or what should they know?
So it's important to note this doesn't actually come in until the end of this year. It needs to be signed off first by an order of council. And what it will mean is that landlords are allowed to take a 2-week or up to 2-week bond if there are going to be pets allowed in the property, and all of this needs to be noted on the agreement. And this is completely separate to the 4 weeks bond that we could take for a rental property. The interesting thing to note is that in the event that there is damage to the property, first of all, the landlord uses the bond that's applied to the tenancy, but they also have the ability to access the PET bond even if that wasn't damage caused by the PET. So technically you can take potentially up to 6 weeks, 4 weeks for the bond and 2 weeks for the PET. The bond system does need to be redesigned to be able to allow for this to take place, which is why it's not going to be coming into effect until later this year.
So if someone's got a cat and a dog, do they have to pay 2 lots of PET bond?
That's a good question. No, you can only take 1 PET bond no matter how many pets you plan on allowing. And it's important to note that landlords will no longer be able to decline or unreasonably decline consent for people having a pet. There are a few reasons that they could say no, things like it might be a dangerous breed of dog, which is listed on the Dog Control Act, or it might just not be a suitable property to keep pets in.
Like a large dog in a small area.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so when do all these changes take effect?
I wish there was a nice simple answer for that, but that's just not the case. So we've already seen the first deadline come in, which was the 30th of January, and that was for the 90-day no-cause notices. There are some technical changes happening in the back end to agreements, and that takes place on the 20th of March. On the 1st of May, fixed-term tenancies will be able to be ended by notice within 90 to 21 days. And then, as I mentioned, the PET bonds will be later this year.
What happened to 1 January 2025 and it all takes effect?
It doesn't work that way with government.
No, it sure doesn't. So there's a deadline coming for healthy homes. What does that mean for landlords?
This is really important, and hopefully everybody out there who's a property owner is already well aware of this, but just in the event that they're not, The 1st of July 2025 is the final deadline for every rental property in the country, whether it's Kaingaora, community housing or a privately owned rental. It needs to meet the Healthy Home Standards, and there are no exceptions and no exemptions to this rule. So effectively what that means is that all 5 of the Healthy Home Standards that were brought in as part of the Healthy Homes Amendments need to be met by 1 July. So if you've got a rental property now and you're unsure of whether it's compliant or if there's still work that needs to be completed to get it compliant, that must be totally finished by the 1st of July. Otherwise, there could be significant fines and you may risk having your professional property management company terminate their agency with you.
So who would you get to have a look to see if your house was compliant?
If you have your property managed, then go straight to your property manager and ask them for where they're at with compliance, and hopefully they've been working with you. And if you're a private landlord, then my recommendation is to get a professional assessment done by a Healthy Homes assessor. There is the ability for landlords to do this themselves, but some of the calculations for things like the heating tool are quite complex, so the recommendation is to get that done professionally. It's also important to note that come the 1st of July, there are going to be some challenges getting hold of tradespeople, so our advice is to get started on this now.
Yeah, good advice. And will the government have people going around and checking the rentals?
So NBIE have actually increased the size of their investigations team. So it is more likely now than ever before that you will get caught at some point if you are trying to get around these rules.
And they'll be wanting to use some landlords as examples, so best advice is don't be that person.
Absolutely. And so previously there has been a reliance on tenants to report landlords, but NB now have the ability to go and carry out those investigations and press forward with court action on their own back.
Good advice. Well, thanks for your time again, Deb. It's been very, very insightful.
Lovely to see you again. Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks again for having me at your head office.
See you next time.